Hey everyone! I think you've heard all about how OBS has a new update, which makes it even easier to install and get started. On top of that, VIPKid is going to have a practice room again. So I know many of you are ready to get started. So I have uninstalled all of my OBS everything, which is why you can see my actual green wall behind me. And we're going to install it together so that you can get started. If you're ready, let's go. Our very first step is going to be getting OBS downloaded onto our computer. So we're going to start by going to obsproject.com. You should see a website very similar to this. And we're going to click on Windows since that's what we're working with today. And it's going to automatically start to download this file. Now, depending on your browser, you may need to say that it's okay to download since it is an installation file. Once that's downloaded, we're going to go ahead and open that file up and start the install process. Now that we're to the actual installer, we're going to do a lot of hitting next. Right here is the intro screen. We're going to click next. This is the license information if you'd like to read, then click next. This we're going to pause real quick. For most of you, you want to leave this alone. There's a few cases where you might not, and if you're one of those exceptions, you'll already know. So go ahead and make sure that OBS installs to the correct location, and now hit install. And then we're going to wait just a minute for it to get going. All right, now here's the thing. If we click finish, this little check box is here and it'll just launch OBS, but we don't actually want it to quite yet. So we're going to go ahead and unclick that and then click finish. Now we're going to go right on over to our desktop. When we run OBS for our VIPKid classroom, we need to make sure it's run as administrator. So you can right click and hit run as administrator, or we can set this up to happen every time. So we're going to go down to properties. And then from there, we're going to go into advanced and check mark this run as administrator, click OK and OK. And it's going to tell you an administrator needs to do it. That's fine. Let's continue. So this means that every time I open OBS, it's going to run as administrator. One caveat is that sometimes when Windows does an update, it undoes that check mark. So if you're having problems in the future, it might be that this was undone. So yes, I want to open OBS. I always get that window since I run as administrator. And here we are. We have a program installed. Now, this auto configuration wizard is a little confusing because OBS is typically made for a streamer, and we are not streaming. And so we're just actually going to select, I will only be using the virtual camera option, which is great because this is a brand new feature in the newest update. We're going to hit next and then just apply settings. Now we have OBS installed and it's time to get it set up for our VIPKid classroom. Let's take a quick pause right here. If you have already been using OBS and you're reinstalling or you're just getting a new computer, this is where you want to import your scene collection. If you don't know what that means, I promise I've got a video coming soon. If you've never used OBS, then let's keep going by looking at how we can customize OBS and this setup. All right, so now let's make this nice and big so you can see, and let's look at this bottom section over here, because this is really important. First of all, let's look at this audio mixer. So you can see me talking right now, how it's picking up the audio. This is really, really important. OBS can record sound if you're recording a video, or if you're streaming, it can transmit sound. However, when we are using a virtual cam, OBS is acting as a webcam, which is not a microphone. Therefore, when you use OBS, you cannot send sound. So you can play a YouTube video, but your students will not be able to hear it through OBS. You have to add another program, which we're not going to get into today. That's one thing that we don't really need to see because we're not using it. So if we go up here to view, we can look at docs, and all these pieces on the bottom are docs, and we can get rid of some. So we can go ahead and get rid of the audio mixer, and we also do not need the scene transitions. Now, we do need our scenes, our sources, and our control, so we're going to leave those alone. Now that we have our interface all set up, let's talk about the difference between a scene and a source. So if we take a look at this picture of a beautiful sunset, that is our scene. The scene is what we want the student to actually see. The sources are the pieces that make up the picture. So in this picture, it's the ocean and the beach, the boats and the sun. In our OBS, it's going to be our webcam, our Google Slides, our props, our browsers, our rewards, all those things that we want to show to the student at a single time. So we're going to start with the simplest scenes and I'll work our way into the more complicated scenes. A quick reminder that this is an introduction video. So I'm going to help you get set up, but this isn't going to go over all the troubleshooting or all the ins and outs. All right, so you have one scene already there because you have to have one. So why don't we right click and rename, and let's make this webcam because we need this webcam to be in VIPKid. So the way it works with VIPKid is that OBS becomes our webcam in VIPKid. So OBS needs to display just us at some point, right? So now we need to go ahead and add a source, right? The actual webcam that makes up our picture. Now you'll notice that this black scene that we have right now is wide. And if you look at your VIPKid classroom, it's square. So I'm going to show you how to help with that. So we're going to go down to this plus under sources, and we're going to add a color source that you can make any color and name anything. I'm just going to leave it as color source. There we go. So now I'm going to change the width and the height to 800 by 600. So 800 by 600. Okay, so that's where we're going to start. So this is the square that represents what we're going to see in VIPKid. Now here's the thing. When VIPKid sees this whole big OBS transmission, it's going to cut off a little of the left and a little of the right, and it's going to keep the middle. So we need to find the middle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this little red corner and I'm going to drag so that it takes up the whole top to bottom. And now I'm going to work on centering it. Now there is not an exact science to finding the center other than having a good eye. The way to make sure that this is right is to pause here, go into your VIPKid classroom, use the virtual cam that you'll need to start and see if this lines up or not. So we're not going to do that because the practice room isn't out yet, but I'll be sure to come back with a video on how to do that as soon as possible. But as long as you've eyeballed it and you've got it pretty close, you'll be just fine to get started and we can adjust later. Now, looking down here at our source, there's two icons. There's an eye and a lock. So the eye hides whatever it's showing. So this is really great because I don't always want this random box to be there. And so I can hide it when I'm not using it to line up my sources. The lock makes it so that I can't move it, right? No matter what I do, I can't move it, so that once I've got that perfectly in place, I can keep it as a guide from here on forward. Okay, so now we want this to be our webcam. So we need to actually add our webcam. So we're going to go back to our plus button and we're going to go and add video capture device. Now it will not let us name it webcam because we named the scene that and we don't want to confuse it. So I'm going to say webcam actual, and you can name these anything that makes sense to you. All right, so it automatically found my integrated webcam, right? So if it doesn't, you can drop down and find your webcam in this list so that it shows you. Now, this configure video might help you if you need to turn off automatic white balance or low light compensation. You will find this really helpful if you want to do things like green screen or not have autofocus happening. That's entirely device dependent. The other thing that's really device dependent is how it displays. So you'll notice that by default, that I am a square, which is perfect for VIPKid because again, I can just grab my little corner and line it up with my box. And now VIPKid is going to see me. Okay, this is a quick public service announcement. I forgot something really important, so I'm inserting it in real quick. When you're adding your webcam and you have these properties open, it's really important that you check box deactivate when not showing. What this means is when I go over to my welcome screen, it stops using my webcam. And this is really important for troubleshooting if something goes wrong and you need to switch back to not using OBS. Because if OBS is using your webcam, then VIPKid cannot. Only one program can use it. And so that makes it a real easy way. Switch to my welcome screen, change it in VIPKid, and off I go continuing to teach. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming. One little caveat to this is that many of your webcams will not be square. So I'm going to go back in real quick, and with the help of some movie magic, here I am as a rectangle instead of a square. So if I try to line this rectangle up with a square, then you do get to see all of me, but you're going to have these top and bottom pieces show up. So the way to do this is actually to make yourself into a square. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and line this up with a corner and drag it all the way out so it fills the whole square. So if you leave it just like this, the thing is that when you get in VIPKid, it's just going to cut off these sides and you're not going to see it, like my drink cup that's hanging out right now, right? Those things aren't just going to be seen. But I don't super like this because then I can't remember like where to stop my hands until I get into the classroom. And again, back to that placing other things on my scene, because there's some great fun things you can do to enhance your webcam and your classroom background and what's displayed. We'll get into that later. So what I can do is on my keyboard, I can hold the Alt button and then I can grab one of these red handles and drag it inwards, and that crops it. So anything that's cropped now gets a green line, and any edge that isn't cropped has a red line. So it's nice and easy to see, and now I have my perfect box and I know exactly what my student is going to see. And for those of you teaching in small spaces, it's really helpful to know what's going to show up and what's not. And that way, if something accidentally gets shifted, you don't get anything extra. So now that my webcam is perfect, I'm going to go ahead and lock my camera in place. And there we go. Now we have a webcam. Now we're going to add our second scene. Our second scene is a welcome or goodbye screen. Now this is super simple, straightforward, and easy, but you will need to already have your welcome screen as an image of some kind. JPEG, PNG, go ahead and create that and then come back. Now that you're ready, we're going to go over to our scenes and we're going to hit plus and we're going to name it. So I'm going to go welcome screen. And then we're going to go over to our sources, but notice that we don't have that color source. The easiest way to do this is go back over to our webcam scene, right click on our color source and copy. Then we can come over to our welcome screen and we can paste a duplicate. And voila, now we've got our reference again so that we can add our scene in. So now you want to go back to that plus and you want to add an image, not an image slideshow, just an image, and name it. So welcome. And then I'm going to click OK. Now you're going to go and find that file and we're going to do some movie magic again. All right, so now I've got my image in and obviously it doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to make it smaller because it's too big, way too big. I don't know why I have such a big file, but apparently I do. Then I can line it up with my gray and I can pull it to fit just perfectly. And again, I always lock everything in place. This way I know that I can't accidentally move it if I click on OBS. Because in OBS, you can either choose to switch scenes manually or use hotkeys. We're not going to get quite into that in this video for now. Okay, so my welcome is just a little bit off. There we go. All right, now let's get into some of the more complicated scenes. Now, you want to have a prop scene and a reward scene. And this is really important because it's going to make it much easier for you in the future. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit add. And let's do our props first. And again, I'm going to go and I'm going to copy my color source. And then I'm going to paste a duplicate and lock it in place so that I can align everything correctly. Okay, so now what we're going to do under our prop scene is we're going to hit add a window capture and we're going to name it props capture or something similar. And now it's like, okay, I have all these windows open, but which one should I look at? So I'm going to tell it which window. Right now, I'm going to use that beach sunset and it's going to appear. The problem with this is you'll notice it doesn't fit and there's no way it's going to fit our square. So when you are actually teaching, you're going to want to have something like this, where you have your props and your rewards up. I prefer as separate windows. And then I've got my extension search engine. I've got my Google Slide props for class 1, Google Slides for class 2, and then I might have my rewards for class 1 and class 2, and so on and so forth. And what size these are drastically affects what it looks like in OBS. So let me show you, for example, if I bring back up our beach, as I drag this wider, it gets wider in OBS. So you need to have a consistent size to your browser. Now, if you added the window capture and the window is up and it's not displaying, you need to fix your hardware accelerator settings in the browser. Check the links below. I have a how to find that in a different guide. So pause here if need be, and then come back when you're ready. So let's go back to our props capture, and I'm going to change it to what is actually the right one that would be my props if I was teaching right now. So let's go and find the right one. Just making sure I've got it right. And here's the thing, capture method, automatic. That's what we want. And then window match priority. So you've got a couple of options here. So it's talking about the window title. That is this little piece up here and whatever it says, which matches whatever is on your bar at the bottom of your Windows computer. So it's going to try to match the title, but if, let's say that I exit out of this and the title suddenly doesn't match, it's going to look for a window of the same type. So another Chrome browser, right? Versus anything else. So that's what we want to leave it as. And then we want to click OK. Now going back to OBS, we can see that we have here what we want. We have our browser capture and we can start to resize it. The problem is see how that doesn't quite fit? What I like to do is go over and I like to go ahead and start a Google slideshow. This way I know that it's going to display correctly when I'm actually showing my props, right? So over here, I don't really want to see the browser, so I'm going to use Alt and I'm going to crop that out. And I'm also going to crop out this extra black, but you may not want to, so now I will leave it alone. And I'm going to make sure the bottom looks set, and then I'm going to match it up with my gray. And see how we get to where it doesn't quite all match up, because now it's going to get cut off because it's so much bigger than the gray. So what I like to do is go ahead and crop off any of the extra black that I don't want to show. And then I want to get this the right size and sort of line it up in the middle. Now you can make this colored background something. Oh, I didn't get all the black. Sorry. Still not there. It really bothers me. I know it's being a perfectionist, but there we go. I really need it to show correctly or it bothers me a lot. You can see a little bit of my bar down here, but generally that is not a problem that bothers me because it's going to go away except for when I'm clicking, and then it goes away and the kids don't seem to care. So if you change this color background, then you can have what looks like a nice border, or you can actually go out, find some border images and add them. So I'll show you a quick version of that with some movie magic. Okay, so now I have a top border and a bottom border, which hides anything that isn't being shown. And this still works really great if you're trying to do things like search. So for example, if I switch over and I want to show a sea turtle, it still fits really, really nicely for any images that you're trying to search for extension. So there you go. So a couple of quick notes that we like to have on our props is that you probably want what we call a pip which stands for picture in picture, because you also want to be seen. This is really important. You cannot add a second webcam source with the same camera, because my camera is being used right now by OBS already. It's just in my webcam scene, right? So if I try to add both, one scene will work and one scene will not. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to copy our webcam source. We're going to go over to props. And now I'm going to paste reference. So anything I do to this webcam source will also appear here, but sizing can be totally different. So as I resize to make me still visible to the students, we are good to go. A couple of quick things to remember. You are not going to have it this big on their screen. Remember, you're itty bitty, and you're also not going to have OBS open this big when you're in your classroom. And I'll be sure to show that at the end. All right, so now we want to get a reward scene, which is going to be super similar. We just want it to display a different browser. So I'm going to add a scene. I'm going to call it rewards. And now I can actually start copying and pasting from my props. So I can copy my webcam and I can paste reference, and I can go back and I can copy my borders if I want to keep those in place. And I want to paste duplicate. And again, duplicate. So the difference between duplicate and replicate is that if I change something in the border here and it's reference, then when I go back and change it, it's going to change for all of everything. So I don't want that. So I want my bottom border. I'm going to copy. I'm going to come over here. Oh, I already copied the bottom. I need to copy the top border. My bad. And I'm going to paste duplicate. Now remember, order matters. So see how my webcam's on the bottom? It needs to be on top so that I'm in front of there. So now we need to add that browser again. So when we make a copy, this is where it's really important to duplicate, because if you do that reference, what's going to happen is that when I change this to a different browser, I am going to also change it in the props, and I need them to be separate. Again, now you can't see me because the webcam needs to be on top. Okay, so there's two ways to change which browser it's seeing. So I can either double click and I'm right back here to my settings, but I can also just go to this really nice drop down menu and find the one that I'm looking for and let that display. So now as I switch between props and rewards, I'm showing both of my browsers. Okay, so those are your main scenes that you need at this stage. So now we need to actually go start teaching. So there's one important step that you also have to do every time. You need to come over here and click Start Virtual Camera. Starting that virtual camera is going to display it in VIPKid. So if you go into VIPKid, you're going to go into your classroom settings and you're going to change the webcam to your OBS camera. And if it comes up blank, it's because you forgot to hit Start Virtual Camera, and you do have to do this every single time that you have it open. My general rule of thumb is that I like to keep OBS very small on my desktop, and you can actually pull these scenes and source box out. And I have a whole video talking about that and this control box. And I like to make OBS small so that I can see what's happening just in case. And so I can keep that little box if I need to do a quick change for my rewards. And then I like to have my scenes and my sources, and you could resize these. I do usually leave the controls over here on the side instead of the bottom. So now I can see everything that's going on. Now, remember a few fine-tuning things. Make sure in your classroom that you're checking that everything is lined up correctly. You could realign that one box, remember, and then set it in place so that it's perfect, and then put it in the background and align everything else to it. And then another thing to note is making sure that everything's correct. Now, a quick note about if something happens and you close out of the browser and you're like, now what? So you can simply come down here and click whichever one you need it to be displaying instead. However, you must in your sources be on the right capture. So if I'm on my webcam, all I have is the deactivate button to hide my webcam. If I'm on the border, then I can change the image source that it's showing as my border. But I need to make sure I'm on rewards capture so that when I do open up a new window, I can quickly just drop, and it helps if you select the right one. Okay, so that is the basics of getting set up. Having a webcam to just display you, having your welcome screen, a props and reward scene so that you can operate. Now, I have a couple of videos such as what to do if something goes wrong, and I will be sure to link a whole bunch of those videos to help you take next steps down in the links in the description. So be sure to check those out, especially the what to do if something goes wrong button, and then how to use hotkeys, because a lot of you guys, instead of clicking manually back and forth between your screens, will use keyboard hotkeys. How to do your daily setup to get ready. I've got all kinds of stuff for you. So I also suggest that you link, subscribe, and comment me any of your questions. I hope this helps you get started. It's so easy and it's so wonderful. And I'm so happy to answer questions, and I will see you guys soon.